Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, as always, joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network, 1350 on your AM dial, 103.9 on your FM dial, spreading the truth of the Catholic faith to the New York City metropolitan area. Please be sure to download the app, share it with your friends. You'll have access to all of our station's content. And if you like what Joe and I do, aside from these interviews that we post on social media, we go live Thursday nights, 9 o'clock, where we get in a whole lot of trouble. That's across X, Rumble, Facebook, YouTube. Hey, wherever you see us, help us out. You know the deal. Like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Today's going to be a fun day. We're welcoming back a friend of the program. We're proud to say a friend of the program, Kevin Wells. Kevin has another book out, his fifth, I believe, and it is The Hermit, the priest who saved the soul, a marriage, and a family. That's available at Ignatius Press. So please, as we always say, let's support our Catholic publishers like Ignatius. So please purchase it from the publisher. And Father Fessio always wants me to point out, make sure you tell your local Catholic parish bookstore or your local Catholic bookstore to order a few copies, and please put it on the shelf. It's not going to stay there too long. Everybody out there, most of you out there, you know who Kevin is. Having said that, he is a former Major League Baseball writer, award-winning journalist, and a Catholic speaker. He is the author of, amongst others, Priest and Beggar, The Heroic Life of Venerable Aloysius Schwartz, and The Priests We Need to Save the Church, and Burst. Kevin is an active evangelist, writer, and podcaster. 121 podcast, 121 podcast, and he's presented at conferences and seminaries nationally and internationally. He lives in Maryland with his wife and children. Kevin Wells, welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe, our brother.
Man, it's awesome to be with you guys again, Joe and Joe. Good morning. How you doing?
Good
Oh,
morning.
good,
Doing
good.
okay. Doing okay. Trying to keep it moving. Before the shows, I don't mind telling everybody, like, the way things are scheduled, and I'm in Arizona and Joe's in New Jersey, and I got to drive my son to school, and then I got to drop him off, and I'm boogieing down Thompson Peak Parkway here in Scottsdale just to get home and get on with Joe and Joe. But it's worth it because we have great conversations, Kevin. I'm not just saying that. It's always very lively. So welcome back, and I'm going to turn it over to Joe, and we'll get rocking.
Kevin, we always begin with a prayer in the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Remember, O most gracious Virgin Mary, never was it known that anyone who sought your help or sought your intercession was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, we fly unto you, a virgin of virgins, our mother. To you we come, for you we stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not our petitions, but in your clemency hear and answer us. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, as Joe Pasillo said, Kevin's an interesting guy. He's around our age. We actually have a mutual friend. And why I find like his journey to be interesting is it's almost like my journey and many people in our like peer group. We went to Catholic school. We kind of did these things. And then all of a sudden, like maybe we made some mistakes, and then God kind of
Maybe,
shows up in our
maybe.
life, and we kind of turn around, and all of a sudden He uses people who He never thought people would be using. Like my friends from school would be like, "Joe's crazy." Like who is this person? I don't know him. So I know Joe Pasillo had a similar situation, and Kevin did as well. I mean, he's on his fifth book, and God's using him. So it's interesting. I find that to be interesting. The last time we had him on, he wrote about a book about a priest, Aloysius Schwartz. He will become a saint one day. And now we're talking about another priest, Martin Flume, who had a big influence on his life and on his wife's life and his family. So I guess a good place to start is who is Father Martin? And tell us about this priest that became a hermit.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. Joe, in the hierarchy of things, Joe, who was the biggest college sinner? You, me, or Joe P?
Oh, I don't know.
All right,
I
that's the
think
after
it's a
show.
flip. I
That's a
actually
that's
think,
a
to be
that's a
honest with you, if
rough
I was going to
question.
make a bet, I bet you me in college and Joe Pasillo after college. If I was going to throw money down.
All right, that's the after show. So, Father Martin Flume. So, Joe and Joe, I'm a blessed man. I've the past, I don't know, 6, 7 years, I've done a bit of travel and speaking, and for some reason, I've gotten a chance to meet priests all over the country, actually outside the country too, and I don't know if I'll ever meet another priest like Father Martin Flume. Who's Father Martin Flume? Father Martin Flume today, as I speak, he is more than likely in some form of prayer or reparation. Why? Because he is a consecrated hermit who has disappeared. I will never see the man who changed my family's life ever again on this side of eternity, because after COVID 2020 and in 21, he asked his cardinal, his bishop, Cardinal Gregory, if he would be allowed to leave and become incarnated in a different diocese so he can give over the remainder of his life as a Holocaust, where he could die to himself, like St. Anthony of the Desert, and offer himself for reparation for the West, for recovery to the priesthood, holy priesthoods, and the church. The scandal, the sin-stained church. He said, I mean, he didn't tell his cardinal that, but I knew Father Flume well, and he wanted to die to himself to give Mary. He consecrated his priesthood to Mary, his life. He wanted to turn his life over as an expiation for the sin of the world. And so that's where he's been for the past 4 years. When he left, my wife, Krista, urged me to really write the book on what Father Flume did for her and for our family during COVID. And that's for your viewer to read. But the book of the Hermit is how this priest took my poor wounded wife, who struggled with secretive binge drinking for several years, and it was bad. Joe and Joe, it was bad. It was the dark night of marriage. And when March 2020, the month we hate to remember because of COVID in America, when a moratorium was put on the sacraments worldwide and masses were shut down and parish doors were locked, that's when Father Flume said, "No, I'm opening up." Because I know there's wounded souls like Kevin's wife, Krista. And he knew, I should say, that during that time, 2018, 2019, prior to COVID, that Krista was healing, before the monstrance every day, daily mass. The medicine was the sacraments, it was weekly confession, it was intensive spiritual direction. And he understood that if all that stuff was yanked away, that Krista could very easily be pulled back in by the talons of the devil. So he said, "I got to find a way." And it wasn't just Krista; it was others that we all have wounds, but others that had whatever it was, pornography, drugs, some kind of mother wound of shame, that Father Flume found a way to nourish these souls during that moratorium, that blackout of the sacraments. So Krista said, "Yeah, Kevin, write the story." So I said, "You're nuts. If I write the story, I got to put your stuff out on the street." And she said, after months of me saying no, she said, "I don't care. That's my old Adam. That's my old skin. I want to expose myself so the priesthood of Father Flume can be exposed to show how he handled COVID-19." And so the book's out, and I think it's doing fairly well because it shows a couple things. It shows the heroism of a priest who's now a hermit, but it also, I think, what I'm learning is it's showing what a married couple does during a dark night, during the metaphorical desert, where a spouse needs to stick the wounded spouse on his shoulder and climb mountains and go down valleys and never depart. So that's sort of, I think, what the book does. That the two-edged sword is, we hold up a paragon in Father Martin Flume, and it gives a pretty intense, pretty raw, pretty ugly, untamed look at marriage during the dark night and how it can survive because God is always faithful.
No, absolutely. Kevin Wells is joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. He's got a new book out, The Hermit, The Priest Who Saved the Soul, a Marriage and a Family. Please buy it from the publisher. The publisher is Ignatius Press, and tell your local Catholic bookstore to order a few copies. There's so many thoughts going through my head based on what you just said, Kevin. Let's go in this direction, all right? Because let's talk about the sacraments, okay, and the need for the sacraments, okay. Our Lady said at Fatima, okay, the final battle is going to be between Satan and the family. The family. I mean, people hear that and they think we're making it up, but the thing is, do you think that the family is in good shape? Out, let's just keep it with America, okay? Family's not in good shape. And families are hard enough to begin with, yet that's the way God wants it. He wants men to be married to women and have lots of kids. So he's telling us to do that. And most people are called to be for that vocation. And we're under constant attack talk about how we have to hunker down, okay? And by the way, I want to applaud you and your wife, okay? Joe and I like to say, or like to think that we're very vulnerable as Catholic men because we want people to know that we have struggled and we do struggle, okay? We all struggle with things. You mentioned your wife and her struggles, but talk about the need to say, I can't, number one, I'm going somewhere with this, Kevin. Number one, I need to change. Okay, that's I think the first question. And number two is I really am having a hard time, and without God's grace, I can't change. I can't just be, I can't just say I'm going to fight my way through. You're fighting your way out of a thing, something you don't have the power to. You have to look for the grace. I'm sorry, our Protestant brothers and sisters. I'm sorry if you're offended by this. The sacraments of the Catholic Church are where you find that grace and that strength needed to be able to fulfill your vocation, okay, and take that wily sob in hell, okay, and leave him there, leave him out of your family. I think you know where I'm going, Kevin. Talk about you got to admit that you need to change. We're all called to. That's what conversion is. And number two, the means by which we change are the sacraments of the Catholic Church.
Yeah, we're either going to be saints in heaven or we're going to go to hell. I mean, there's no two ways about it. So when we realize that there is a heaven and hell, and that we all don't go to heaven just because we're nice, I think Joe, just briefly, I think one of the massive problems in the world today is many people, I'll say the majority of people, maybe even Catholics, believe they're all going to heaven. That's a lie from the devil right there. So how do we get to heaven? Well, we need to train. We need to train our bodies. We need to whip our bodies. We need to get our bodies conform to what Christ's will is for us. And how do we do that? Well, we got to start with the sacraments. I need the blood of Christ poured into my soul. I need my stuff in a confession line unloading my junk, my sin. I need the graces to wash over me so I have a heartbeat's chance of actually getting to heaven. I need to strive every day and wake up and say, Lord, first words out of my mouth, Lord, help me to do your will. Because if I try and muscle up and do it myself, I'm going to fail. So help me to do your will. So I try and get the daily mass. I try and commit to that at least monthly confession. I get to adoration once or twice a week. I need Jesus Christ because he is the medicine that's going to take this tired old Adam, this beat up old Adam, this sinner, and try and make it set it right. So that's that. Now, as far as the family, Joe, what I find demoralizing is this. So we know what Lucia said about the last secret of Fatima. We know what it is. I'm going after the family. I'm killing the family. I'm crushing the family. Well, yeah, that's what's going on today. We don't need to overanalyze what's going on worldwide with the destruction of the family. We've seen it, I'll just say with the wokeism and on, I'm not even talking about like the divorce rates and kids that are off the rails, but just the insanity of gender and all that. But Joe, to make it to practicalize it, it's very seldom said. I don't know if I've ever heard it from a pulpit. I really don't. Maybe I've heard it once or twice, but pretty much every member in the family nowadays walks around, goes to work, goes to church, goes to school with a demon in their pocket. That cell phone acts as a Ouija board. I mean, people don't talk about it. That stinking thing's a Ouija board. It's not just like playing around with a game from the 1970s on a table. The cell phone's worse. So Lucia's secret is like, well, they're not even trying. I mean, there's no straitjacket on this thing. Mom and dad aren't putting a straitjacket on this thing. So little Sally or little John's in the back of the room at 8 years old, 9 years old, and the door's locked and an image of carnality pops. Well, mom and dad are like, hey man, it's a toy. Well, the problem is this, Joe. This is the problem. Not only are little Sally and Joe not being guarded by mom and dad, but mom and dad are down the hallway or down the road, and they're scrolling too.
Right.
Maybe mom's picking a fight on Facebook with I don't know, someone who doesn't align with her thoughts, or she's trying to protect a lion on the Ivory Coast, or she's trying to protect Mother Earth or whatever. And dad's maybe looking at the New York Jets or New York Giants, granularly breaking down the statistics, or maybe he's scrolling through porn or listening to his favorite podcast host. But the kid's in the back room just getting his soul stolen by Satan. So we are to blame. I am to blame as the shepherd of my home. if I don't look at all my kids and say, what am I doing? Am I wasting time on the cell phone? Am I allowing my kids to get sucked into hell by Satan? So yeah, of course the family's being destroyed, but what part am I playing in that? Am I a part that's on the sideline just saying, yeah, man, let it go. Here's your play toy, go at it. And for me too, oh, I'm home from work. Yeah, it was a great work day. I need to unwind because I worked hard today. Let me just scroll for a couple hours.
Right.
Unacceptable. That's why in my little humble microscopic soapbox right now, I think the one of the reasons the family's being destroyed is because of technology.
Yeah, Kevin, Joe, if you don't mind, I want to stay there for 1 second, okay? And Kevin Wells is with us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. We're discussing his new book, The Hermit, The Priest Who Saved a Soul, a Marriage, and a Family. That's available at Ignatius Press. Two things, and I'm going to hand it over to Joe real quick, Kevin. Is number one, full disclosure, Joe Rossinello does not own a cell phone. I so applaud him for that.
But I
I'm
do have a
not saying.
computer. I scroll, but fair enough.
Okay, no, yeah, but you understand. I get it, Joe, and I will always say we're on. Joe and I have a podcast, and we're on the radio. Okay, so we have to scroll at least to a degree. The difference is between like the church teaches with many things. Could be alcohol, could be food, could be sex. All right, it's called use, not abuse. We need to use the products of that we create for God's purposes. Okay, so to put that in perspective, but Kevin, you could appreciate this. Like Joe said, we're all around the same age. Um, my kid's 15 and a half years old, which by the way, Kevin, last time you were here, he was my foster son. He's now our legal son. He's changed his name to Joseph Pasillo. So I just wanted to tell you that. But when we were kids, we number one, we didn't have cell phones. If we were bored, we grabbed a sponge ball, we walked down to the playground, and we by ourselves, even if our friends were not, and we just threw the sponge ball against the wall, and that was a blast. You know, that's how you learn how to catch to catch a ball because it bounces back off. My kid has a flip phone, and thank God he doesn't even want a cell phone because he knows Mama and I don't want him to go through what you're describing. I don't want to be a papa that says, "Here, just get out of my way. Just here, to go on your phone." God knows what they're doing. So, and as men, as Catholic men, and then I'm going to throw it over to Joe. That's why we have to, you've written a book, The Hermit, The Priest Who Saved the Soul, of Marriage, and a Family. We have our priests, good priests like Father, praying for us, but we gotta pick up the ball too. As we have to, we have the community of saints praying for us, but we have to guard ourselves and our family and our children. And you can't take these things lightly. Quick comment on that, if you don't mind, Kevin.
Yeah, well, so you mentioned Joe to start that Joe doesn't have a cell phone, and Joe said, well, sometimes I'll scroll on the computer and I think it was John New yeah, it was John Newman who said we have the Aboriginal Vicar of Christ. It's our conscience. So we know if we're scrolling too much, whether it's on a computer or a cell phone. At the end of the day, we have a governor in us. So what's a vicar? A vicar's the pope. So we have a pope in us, the Aboriginal Vicar of Christ. It's this thing in us that says you're disordered. You're scrolling too much. You're allowing your child to hang out in his bedroom too often with a phone. So we know it. The problem we have, it's this. I'm gonna say it. It's this thing that we have called sloth. We're like, yeah, man, it's wrong. Yeah, man, I know I shouldn't be scrolling, or yeah, my kid shouldn't be in the back room, but I'm just too stinking lazy to address it. So yeah, it's we know when we're out of order. I always say when we're off the tracks, when I'm a broken, like remember the old pinball machines where it would say tilt. I know when
Tilt.
I'm tilt. So I got to get so I I know when I'm heading towards tilt, and I got to say no. This is Jesus in me saying get your butt in gear. So anyway, that's where I'll respond to that is just we have a conscience, and if it's formed, we know right from wrong, and if we're gonna stick with the wrong, then shame on us.
Right, and that's that's why it's important that we have these conversations. We need to try to get out there, the Catholic men, say, hey, we're regular guys, all of us. We're just regular guys. We have all the same struggles, but we have to keep it moving. We have to keep it moving forward. And it's so important that you wrote this book, Kevin, The Hermit, The Priest Who Saved the Soul, of Marriage, and a Family, Father Martin Flum. That's available at Ignatius Press. Because yes. We have to we rely on priests. The church is there for us. We talked about the sacraments, but let me not be long-winded. Joe Rossinello.
Marriage is a sacrament. I think people give lip service to it. Why? Why is that important? Because we are broken people and we are selfish by nature. All people, humans, are selfish. I don't even believe in marriage outside of sacramentality. I don't. I don't even believe in civil marriage because I don't think it works. The sacraments are the medicine for the world. That's how I view my Catholic faith. And I am a sick person, so therefore I cling to the church. That's how I view my Catholicism, me. Um, and again, circling back to marriage, I have given talks to young kids. My old parish priest used to ask me to, before they went to pre-K, and my wife and I would give a talk. The first thing I would ask the couple, they were young, maybe 26. I was older. I got married at 43. So I would say, what is the goal of your marriage? We all set goals in America, especially high achieving people. I want to bench press 350 pounds. I want to run a marathon under 3 hours. I want to get an MBA. I want to do this. I want to start a business. This is what Americans do. Well, marriage is probably the biggest decision of your life, arguably. Who you marry and your marriage. What's the goal of your marriage? So I would ask that question before my talk. What is the goal of your marriage? What I wanted to hear and I didn't hear is this. My goal as the husband is to get my wife to heaven, and her goal is to get me to heaven. There is no other goal. Nothing. Zero. No other goal. And how do we do that? By having a sacramental marriage, because all of us are selfish, and selfishness destroys marriage. That is it. I mean, and the world is not convinced of that, Kevin. Like, they'll look at me and they're not convinced of it because I think we're too confident in our own, whether it's our background, our education, our self-confidence, whatever you want to call it. And they don't, it's like an alcoholic. An alcoholic acknowledges I have a problem and I can't control the problem, so I'm going to look to a higher power. Well, I got news for you. Marriage is no joke. I have 5 kids under 10. I work, my wife works from the kitchen table. My day starts at 4 a.m. and it ends at 10 every day. And on Saturday, I give myself a break. I'm up at 5. So it's no joke. It doesn't end. It's relentless, relentless. And if you don't have sacramental grace, I don't care who you are. You're going to be like, what am I doing? What am I doing? I'm not doing this. So I got news for you people. Marriage is a sacrament and you need the sacraments. Kevin, your thoughts?
I know the Protestants love that last 3 minutes, Joe. Yeah, no, but Joe, I am aligned with you. I don't know how I can be more aligned with you. I'm dead man walking without the sacraments. It's that's it. I don't need to elaborate what Joe you said so beautifully. Uh, I work with I'm very fortunate. I work with the poor, the most bullied kids in the world in 7 different countries, 20,000 of them that this group, the Sisters of Mary, take care of. And anyway, so I see horrifying poverty. I've seen it in Africa. I've seen it all over the world in helping the Sisters of Mary. But anyway, what I've come to see, Joe, is in America and in the West, we have a far worse poverty. And I mean this. We have a far worse poverty. We have the poverty of the warm blanket. And when we wake up in the morning, that blanket feels just right and the pillow's just right and the alarm goes off and we say, I don't want to get out of bed. I just want to sleep in, whatever it is. So we sleep in for another 43 minutes. We hit that snooze button 6 times. We finally get out. And then we go to the warm $300 bathrobe with the slippers. And then we get the coffee that's just right. And all of a sudden, we do this throughout the entire day. And we have forgotten God because we are so stinking comfortable. Matter of fact, I say this all the time. I'll just say it now. The greatest issue in the world today is one word. It's comfort. Because when we're comfortable, we are the antithesis. We are the exact opposite of the starved man on the cross. Jesus Christ was not comfortable when he poured himself out, every last drop of blood, to show us if you want to love like me, you want to love your spouse, you want to love your kids, you want to love your neighbor, then you must pour yourself out and take on violence. Jesus Christ, the centerpiece of his identity, should be my identity. I should be the starved man on the cross, saying, if I'm going to love properly, the burden of my duty as Krista's husband, as the father of my children, is to take on violence, as Jesus Christ showed me. But this comfort, this tsunami wave of comfort, which has swept over the West, and we've seen it in spades, just over the past 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I don't, you can blame it on whatever you want to blame it on, but until we eliminate this comfort in our lives, then sloth is going to pull us into hell. I'm sorry, I hate to be frank, but it's sloth and comfort that's going to say, hey man, but I'm nice. I go to heaven, right? I'm nice. No, you don't. No, you don't go to heaven because you're nice. You go to hell because you didn't try to resemble Jesus Christ, who spent 40 days in the desert mortifying his flesh, doing penances. You didn't never understood that Jesus slept outdoors under the stars. Jesus was the poor man of Nazareth. Jesus had no place to lay his head. Joseph and Mary, what they do? They just gave a little. They didn't have the good stuff, so they gave a little turtle dove, less than a turtle dove. You must subtract, you must amputate from the comforts in your life. You must annihilate them to have a heartbeat's chance to resemble Jesus Christ. That's all. At the end of the game is this: am I trying to resemble Christ in the way he loved the world? And if the answer is not really, then get it together, because there's still time.
Well, then what a lot of people should do, what they ought to do, is go out and buy your book, because Father Martin Flum, and I'm being serious, to me, we need examples. I mean, we all need examples. Say, wow, what is that guy doing? What did those apostles do? They went out and they preached and they all got killed and I mean, it's amazing. Let's take a quick break here at the front line with Joe and Joe Kevin, and then we'll jump back in on the other side. The Hermit, the priest who saved the soul, a marriage, and a family. That's Kevin's new book. It's about Father Martin Flum. It's available at Ignatius Press. Please buy it from the publisher. And or tell your local Catholic bookstore to order a few copies, put it on the shelf. Okay, you're joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe on the Veritas Catholic Radio Network. So we're going to just cut out for about 30 seconds, and we'll be right back for another great segment with Kevin Wells. Stick around.
Joe, can you hear
Welcome
me?
back,
Oh,
Go ahead, Kev. No, go ahead, Kevin.
okay, I can get in the Father Flume and how he lived that from an early
Yeah,
stage.
I was just going to go there. If you're just joining us back here at the front line with Joe and Joe, we're with Kevin Wells. Kevin's written a new book about Father Flume, The Hermit, the priest who saved a soul, a marriage, and a family, available at Ignatius Press. Kevin, I'm just going to give you the floor. Tell us more about Father Flume.
Yeah, Joe, I'm so glad that you brought Father Flume up. I just want to say, so now, in a way, he's taken um, the best he can. He's taken humanity's sin on his back and says, Lord, um, save these souls, take on the souls in purgatory that nobody's praying for. Lord, I'm willing to take on the attacks of the devil, just like all the hermits and old desert monks used to take on. They were always attacked by Satan. Well, Father Flume, if folks read my book, The Hermit, I'll just show it right here. If they do read, look at this beautiful woman right here. See that? That's Krista. That come on, come on. Look at that right there. Not the ugly guy. So. Oh, by the way, that's Father Flume in the middle, the big Old Testament bearded guy.
I
So
love the beard. I'm going to strive for that.
it takes a while. It takes a while, but Father Flume, when he entered seminary, he understood from day one of seminary that if he was going to conform his life to Jesus Christ in persona Christi, he needed to begin to strip himself bare. So what did he do? He stopped eating all meats. Why? Because he knew that meats would make him more comfortable, a little bit lazier maybe. What else did he do? He gave up all alcohol. He's a beer drinker, big deal. I'm giving it up. Why? Because Jesus Christ, to be Jesus Christ, I need to strip myself of comforts. There wasn't in a seminary, there wasn't a place to adore the Blessed Sacrament every night. Father Flume knew, well, hey, I got to be around Jesus, just like Joe Resinello was saying earlier. I need Jesus. So he would hop in his little 1980s Toyota every night and would drive across town, Washington D.C., to a little parish that offered all night adoration. Why? He did it every. None of his other seminarians did, but he knew he needed Jesus. So when he became a priest 7 years later, he was stripped bare. He was muscular. He was a man on fire, and he was. And if your viewers read The Hermit, they'll see that he was physically attacked by Satan. physically attacked by Satan. I'm not talking now he's a hermit because he's I don't know. I'll never see him again, but I imagine demons are visiting him very often because of what he's doing for us, for the three of us, and for all the world. But he was attacked uh, in his parish, and we know what happened. It's a story that the folks are going to have to read in the book. But why? Why did Satan go after Father Flume? Why would he do that? Why? Because Father Flume said, "I will try and bring Jesus Christ in his fullness into every single person I encounter on a bus, walking down the street, the folks in the pews, anyone, everybody in my sight, I'm going to bring them Jesus Christ." So yeah, he was a man who died to himself so Jesus could be born more in him.
We live in a world that doesn't believe in the devil, Kevin. I mean, we live in a world that has a hard time believing in God, and but certainly not the devil. No, he's real, and see, this is my argument to a lot of people. He's real because the guy who was raised from the dead said he was real. You know what I mean? I'm going to listen, like Joe Rossinello says on the show. When you're raised from the dead, maybe I'll listen to you a little bit more. Until that time, okay, I'm going to go with the guy who was raised from the dead. I think he's got a little bit something more to say to me that I should listen to. Kevin Wells is with us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. He mentioned the book and Father Flume. Read the story in there about him being attacked in his church, by the devil. The book is The Hermit, The Priest Who Saved the Soul, A Marriage and a Family, available at Ignatius Press. Joe Rossinello.
A holy priest cannot be understated. I mean, we all have encountered some priests that are just holy, but a holy people cannot be understated either. And I want to talk a little bit about what you mentioned, how Father Flume basically developed his holy life. He worked at it. You see, we could do that too. We prioritize things like what we spend time on. We prioritize in our marriage, in our personal life. Well, obviously, we live in the world. We're not monks, we're not priests. We're in the world. But what could we do? We could pray the rosary with our wife. We could do that. It takes 15, 20 minutes. We can go to confession regularly once a month. We can go to daily mass if we can. If we can't, we go on Sunday with our family. Very simple. We could fast on Wednesday for the church, on Friday for the world. We can do that. But as far as the priest, what could the priest do? The priest could have adoration in his chapel. He could pray a holy hour every day. He could receive every day when he says the Mass. He could go to confession himself, but offer confessions. Holy priests offer confessions. That's a sign. Have a devotion to Our Lady. It's work. And it's like anything else, whether you're an athlete, whether you're a businessman, it's work. But I will tell you this, and many people, again, high achieving people want to do something. I want to accomplish something. If you're a holy person, there is no doubt in my mind, holy people accomplish the most impactful, like, people are holy. Think about Catherine Drexel. Recently, we had her feast day. She inherited a ridiculous sum of money. It would be like almost like, I don't know, Bill Gates' son, just to use him as an example, got his whole fortune. She founded 60 schools. I mean, think about that for a second. I mean, obviously we're not in that situation, but the impact that she had it's massive. But we can do that too. But instead, we worry about stupid things that mean nothing in the end. They really do. Even if you achieve a ridiculous amount in your life. I'm not saying you don't work. I'm not saying you don't work out. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is if that's all you worry about, when you're 85 years old and you can't get up off the chair, you're going to be like, what the heck did I do? Nothing. What are your thoughts? Because that's how Americans roll. I'm going to be truthful with you. That is how they roll. And I think it's a lack of vision.
Well, it's a lack of vision, but it's yeah, the guy with the most toys at the end, he don't win. He don't win. So we know that. Joe, I want to sort of boomerang back to how you started this, and it kind of will slide into what you just asked. So you said, what the laity can do, and you're right. Bam, 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 bam. You nailed it. And then you said what the priest did, and bam, bam, bam. You nailed it. But one thing that I believe that a priest could do that worldwide is not being done. Obviously, we all know faithful priests, we know strong priests, but by and large, um, many priests have contracepted their tongues. So they will not proclaim the blazing furnace of what the gospel is. So that's why you mentioned earlier, Joe P, that folks don't believe the devil's real, or they don't believe in mortal sin, or they believe that, hey, you know what? I do have a lot of toys, and at the end of my life, God will say, hey, he worked hard. He's got a boat, he's got a big house. That's because he worked hard. So he gets heaven. So because the priest has bridled his tongue on what mortal sin is, on what is demanded of a spouse, as you said, Joe R., in praying the rosary, hopefully nightly with the wife, being a good dad, then we might have not have this moral wintertime that we live in, this collapse of catechesis, this lack of understanding of what it actually means to become a Catholic man, a Catholic woman. So until that priest rejects the genuflection to the world, where if I say something hard, then I might get a tough time in the vestibule after mass, or I might suffer a little bit from a call down to the chancery or whatever, until he rejects the demon of fear and says, no, the burden of my identity as a shepherd of souls is to proclaim what it is to become like Christ and to lead my flock to heaven. Until that happens, then I because we depend on our shepherds to sort of press us, sort of to grab our face mask and reorient us to the things that we're missing. And until this happens, until the priest becomes prophetic, as Father Flume always was, and that's Krista, my wife Krista, changed because Father Flume was bold. You know what he said, Joe? You know what he said, Joe? He said this. Hey, Krista, this is after about a year of spiritual direction, intensive spiritual direction. He said, "Hey, Krista, I think we're going to have to stop doing this." And poor Krista's like, "Well, Father Flume, I need you though." No, Krista, I can't do it anymore because you keep drinking and you love the demon inside you more than anything I can do. The demon is taking you to hell, and it's gotten to the point where I feel like I'm powerless because he's stronger than anything I can do. Don't tell me a conversation like that didn't scare that you know what out of my wife and lead her to her conversion and to her freedom. Until we get priests that speak with boldness, clarity, and this prophetic voice, then I don't know how the Catholic Church is going to dig itself out of this moral winter time or this winter time that it's in.
I think one of the ways, Kevin, and I'm not patting ourselves on the back. Joe and I and you, we're all just trying to do our part. One of the ways is we have to be, well, and you don't have to tell a couple of Italian guys this. We have to be louder, all right, than other people. Let me give you a quick example. So in the parish I was in when I was still in Jersey, um, actually the not well, that's a different story. Just one of the parishes we were in. One of the priests, good priest, missionary priest, Father Jim. All right, he always had to preface everything he said when he was giving a homily because of all the offended people in the pews, and they would call the diocese. They would call the Archdiocese of Newark, and they would make complaints about him because he was talking about things like you're describing. Like we're here talking about the family. How's this goes over like a lead balloon in a homily when you say, listen, if you're married, first of all, the sexual liberation and that whole idea that was born in the 1960s and had its origin in hell, okay? That's not for you. You can't do it. You can't contracept. Okay, forget about abortion because most people in the pews say, well, yes, I'm against abortion. Are you against contraception? Because the church teaches that too. Are you against IVF? The church teaches that too. Okay, all these different things. They pick up the phone, they call the diocese. My point is, by doing shows like this, by being out there in the public, we need to bear better witness, not just to the culture at large, but also to our leaders in the church. No, we want you to respond to us. Okay? I don't want to hear about immigration. Okay? I do. It's an important topic. Okay? But if that's all the priest is going to talk about, and he's not going to address the fact, okay, that contraception is wrong, that IVF is wrong, that abortion is wrong, that gay marriage is wrong, and all these different things, okay, then those people are still going to get their way when it comes to picking up the phone and calling, Tobin in Newark or Dolan in New York and say, "Oh, we don't like what the priest said. He made us feel so uncomfortable." Grow up. You're a Roman Catholic. Grow up. I think we just have to be louder than Kevin. It's the only, and just keep speaking more boldly and drown them out. What are your thoughts?
Oh, well, without question. I mean, I do it through writing, but I do some speaking, but I think if at the end of the day, all we are called to do by God is oblige our conscience and His will, and if that causes us to write or say indelicate things that might cause us, that really no, often causes us to lose friends. I've lost a lot of priest friends, and I really have because of things I've written. I've lost friends. I just have because God calls me not to take shortcuts on the truth, and I can't do it. At the end of the day, I can't do it. Maybe it's the way I was raised, a big Irish Catholic family, but yeah, of course we've got to be loud, but it's and we're guys, we know how sort of how to shuck and jive and get to that point where we can be bold. Sometimes it takes a little maneuvering, a little finessing, but at the end of the day, yeah, God commands us to just tell it as it is.
No, I hear you. Kevin Wells joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe. We want everybody to stick around. Kevin's going to probably have to jet out in about 5 or 6 minutes, and we don't want to keep him. But his new book, The Hermit, The Priest Who Saved the Soul, A Marriage and a Family. It's about his relationship, his and his wife's relationship with Father Martin Flume. That's available at Ignatius Press. Please go out and buy the book. Joe Rossinello, Kevin's got about 5 or 6 minutes left with us. So what do you want? What do you want to end with?
Well, I want to just talk about being countercultural. God calls us to be in the world and not of the world. That means, we're not Mennonites. We don't go live in the middle of Indiana. Although I do
Might
have,
not be a bad idea, Joe.
I think about becoming an Amish man in Lancaster, PA, a lot because I've had it, but I'm not going anywhere. So at the end of the day, we have to be countercultural. That means we don't look like everybody else. That means our family. I live in a small house. I drive a 21-year-old car. You know what I'm saying? Like I have 5 kids. And frankly, we're a mess. Like I'm not saying like I'm not like no one's putting my family on the cover of People magazine because it's messy. Kids, walls get broken, crying, madness. But that's countercultural. It's not wrapped in a nice, neat. And I say that to anyone who's listening to this. You don't have to start as no one's perfect. I'm not perfect. Trust me. Come into my house. You'll see. You're not going to see perfect. But what you're going to see are 2 people trying very hard. And that's the important thing. Goal orient your life and basically start small. One Hail Mary with your wife, just one. Go to church together on a Sunday. It's 45 minutes. Pray to God and to Our Lady to get you into the confessional. Just start and be willing to be countercultural. The Holy Spirit will do the work, is what I'm trying to get at. And He's still working on me. Believe me, He's still working on me. Your thoughts, Kev?
Kevin, Kevin, if you got to go after your comments, then just feel free. Just giving you a heads up.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, Joe Ressinello. Yeah, we all, it's like spring training in baseball. They start with pitchers and catchers, on February 15th. They go back to the basics. So you got to start slow. Yeah, it's like I'll go back to the word training. So let's just say all three of us identify something in our lives that either needs to go or something that we want to be that we just don't have. Either side of the street works. Well, we set a date. We say, okay, I'm going to give myself 6 months, and I'm gonna do this for God or my wife or family, or I'm going to give this up for God, my wife and family. So you start to train. You start slow, and but as time goes, what happens is God, it's not us. God, who loves us beyond all measure, begins to sanctify us, and He rewards us for our pursuit to try and resemble His Son more. And He does the work within us. So I'll say, Joe, at the end of the day, it is God that's going to change us. And the more we spend time, whether it's meditative prayer, contemplative prayer, the rosary, for me, I've, over the past few years, I've fallen more into contemplative prayer, and that's really sort of helped me. But we find that way where God begins to, he almost like he has a scalpel, and he's sort of like carving the things out in us that the predominant fault that aren't compatible with this thing we want to be, because God is sort of rewarding us. He's like, yeah, yeah, Jojo and Kevin, they want to give me more of themselves, and I'm going to help them because they keep coming back to me in prayer. So we talked about the sacraments earlier in the podcast, but one of the things that I need to always keep in the forefront is that umbilical cord to heaven, and that's prayer. I gotta stay in the game with prayer. So that's what I'll encourage before I jet out is for your viewer, for your listener, um, if your prayer life, if your conscience tells you, you know what, there's more in my tank, I would say start there. You just tack on another 10, 15 minutes a day. I always say there's no excuses for not getting up earlier in the morning. None, especially for a man. I mean, man up, just man up, get out of bed, light a candle, go to that dark room to get a prayer chair and just spend time in prayer. Maybe get a scripture verse and sort of get your mind percolating so you can fall into prayer. But prayer for me is the elixir that will sort of lead us to get to that 6 months conversion or transformation that we set out 6 months earlier.
Kevin, before you go, tell our audience where they could find your podcast, where they could buy your books, anything, social media.
Yeah, I would just go on kevinwells.org, and they can find out all that stuff. And Joe and Joe, I want to mention I have a book that's going to be out in a month or so. It's called Coached by the Cure. Coached by the Cure. We know who the Cure is, St. John Vianney, and I think it's a wild one. It's a Catholic crazy LSD trip because I pulled John Vianney from the grave, and he talks to 2025 about, hey man, uh-uh. Ours was dead after the French Revolution, and here are the steps I took. And not only did ours come back, but all of France did. And even Americans began to board boats to see this priest in this little podunk town who they were told could read souls. So this book is essentially John Vianney's recipe for the West in 2025. So it's called Coached by the Cure, and it's out by with Scepter Publishers. Scepter
So,
Publishers.
so what you're saying is you're going to be back at the front line with Joe and Joe soon.
I can't wait, man. I can't wait.
Well, we can't wait, brother. All right, Kev, we know you got to go. Joe and I will wrap it up over here. All right, and we encourage everybody to go out and buy the book, The Hermit, The Priest Who Saved a Soul, a Marriage, and a Family, available at Ignatius Press. Kevin Wells, God bless you, brother. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Joe and Joe. I enjoyed it.
All right, awesome. We'll see you soon.
I'll see you.
So, Joe, I mean, I think one of the things that we could leave our audience with, because and I want your comments on this, because we were talking about comfort, right? The thing that strikes me is that, when you look at, let's say, my problem, and the reason why, having these conversations with people like Kevin and books that he's written like this one, is that the idea is that, well, one of the things we're confronting and fighting against is materialism. But we always look at materialism and say, well, that's Marxist or that's communist. But the trappings of, let's say, prosperity. We live in a prosperous country. The trappings of a product of a prosperous country is we could fall into that complacency. We make idols out of, let's say, our economy and things like that, rather than saying, no, they're good, they're useful, they help me to make money to raise my family so we could have the things that we need, and dare I say, so that we could live a decent life. Okay, the church doesn't want you to suffer, all right, and go to heaven at the end of the day. That's why I think it's important that there are people like Father Flume out there who go into the desert, for heaven's sake. All that man does, as Kevin just said, that's all he does, is pray for people like us. Pray for society, pray that people convert, pray that people go to heaven. Your thoughts, Joe?
Well, I'll be honest. I think two things are missing in the family. One, Americans are too comfortable. If you look at the trajectory of the Italian family, in the turn of the 20th century, they came to America. They were very, very Catholic. And frankly, Italians now blended into Americanism, and many of them don't even go to church. I mean, I could just speak for my street. Most of the people on my street, a lot of Italians, I don't see them on Sunday getting into the car and going to church. So, what brought that about? I would say it's too much comfort. And frankly, if we read the social compendium of the Catholic Church, we need to provide for our needs, for our children, our wives. Basically, do we live in a safe place? Do we have a roof over our head? Is there heat? Do the kids get educated? That's one of the obligations of a Catholic parent. But outside of that, really, if you're blessed enough that you make a lot of money, to be honest with you, those who've been given much, much is expected, and God will judge you based upon that. That's not Joe Resinello talking. That's the scripture. It's the story of the person with 5 talents, 3 talents, and 1 talent. And God is going to show us what we could have done. That is part of the judgment. This is what you did, and this is what you could have done. And ultimately, all we have to do is provide for our needs. But that is not how the American family is geared. It's a show. I need to take that Facebook poster, that picture, and post it. Look at me. Look at me at Disney. Look at me here. Look at me there. And that is not valued by God. And it shouldn't be valued by us. And that's why people contracept, Joe Pasillo. Because they want that picture. They want that vacation. They want that fancy house. They want that fancy car. And if you read the compendium of the Catholic Church, it says we are to provide for our needs and the education of our children. And that's the truth. And this is not the direction of the American family. And that is why I'll use the Italians. They came here, they were prosperous, and they forgot about God. Not all of them, a lot of them.
Yeah, no, that's true. And that's why we have to remember, okay, if you're joining us here at the front line with Joe and Joe, we just wrapped up with Kevin Wells. Go out and buy his book, The Hermit, The Priest Who Saved a Soul, a Marriage, and a Family. But when I hear stories, Joe, excuse me, about somebody like Father Martin Flume, I think in my mind, to do those things that you just described are difficult. I think what people need to realize is that when they think, oh, I can't do that, I have this, you have a host of people you will never know. If it wasn't for Kevin, nobody would know Father Martin Flume. Okay, but he wrote a book about how Father impacted his life and his wife. He's in a place where he's praying for all of you. We have so much help and grace and blessings that are flowing down from heaven. We need to open our eyes to that. But again, it goes back to what you always talk about what we value. Okay. Now, Joe, I want to drive a decent car. I don't want to suffer. I don't know anybody who wants to suffer. The difference between us and the rest of the world is we accept that there are times when you're going to have to.
But here's the thing. If you have children and you're open to life, you're going to have to sacrifice and suffer for them. It's
built in.
Well, it's baked into the process. That's what Jesus did. Everyone is called to die to themselves. That's the path to heaven, whether you're a priest, whether you're single, or whether you're married. And doing that is sacrificial living. And when we empty ourselves, we're filled with God. That's the formula. And if you don't prescribe to that formula, whether you're a priest, whether you're married, or whether you're single, you're not going to be filled with God. And frankly, you may find yourself on the wrong end of things when you stand in front of him. I'm not judging anyone. I'm just telling you what the church teaches. Right. So I have to worry about me and my wife and my kids. But I set the temperature in my house, me and my wife. And that's basically like, have you overextended yourself? Oh, I can't have kids. Well, what kind of house did you buy? Your mortgage is $10,000 a month. Of course you can't have kids. That was the decision you made in the beginning of your marriage. Were children part of that decision? This is my point. Where is your goal? And what is your goal? And that is not being observed. I'm not being judgmental. I have eyes, Joe. I have eyes. Just like people have eyes when they look at me. And this is the deal. Do we know what our church teaches? Do we know our obligations as married Catholic people? Are they being communicated by the church? Right. And when we fall and fail, as we all do, and I do every day, Do we have a confessional situation where a priest tells us in a kind and gracious way, and then we look to God for the grace to correct it?
Well, that's the
That's the
important thing.
path to heaven.
Now, that's exactly what it is. We got to wrap it up here at the front line with Joe and Joe, Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello. We went way in the breach today with Kevin Wells. Please go out and buy his new book, The Hermit, The Priest Who Saved a Soul, a Marriage, and a Family. Kevin, you could find more about Kevin at kevinwells.org. He also has the word one, the number two, and the word one, 121 podcast. Kevin's very well known. Kevin's got a lot to say. We're blessed that he's a friend of Joe and mine, and we love when he comes on the show. So please, wherever you see this video part of this or the audio on Veritas Catholic Network, please share it with your friends. You could download the app from Veritas so that you could do that, and you'll have access to all of our station's content. Follow Joe and I across social media, X, Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube. We go live Thursday nights at 9 o'clock Eastern time, where we get in even more trouble than we get in Veritas, but that's fine. So we like doing that. That's one of the reasons why we're here. Thanks once again. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you soon.